The mysterious apparition that saved castaways in the Indian Ocean. A Dutch freighter, Anaild, was returning from Far Eastern ports and crossing the Indian Ocean with a full load destined for the Netherlands. Its captain was Harver, a 58-year-old sea wolf. However, its owner, Van Voorn, age 65, was also on board the ship, who used to take some pleasure trips to the Dutch Indies, colonies of his country at the time, during the summer months. It had already been 15 days since Anaild had set sail and the weather was still calm. However, an unbearable heat prevailed, absolutely no breath of wind. The black smoke rose from the chimney in a straight line into the ether, into the air, until it dissipated without ever deviating, a proof that even in the upper strata of the atmosphere, universal stillness prevailed. Captain Harver, after observing his instruments for a while and drawing his inquiring gaze to the exotic horizon, said, "This stifling calm and the falling of the barometer show that something is going on. Some storm is raging within 100 or 200 miles of us. That's how this ocean is. Here reigns peace, quiet and unbearable heat, while surely somewhere beyond the sea is boiling, storming. It is only enough to pass outside the area of the storm, and this will be done, I believe, because the wind for the last 3 days has been blowing south, so we will keep our course." End quote. Owner Van Voorn, himself an old seaman, fully agreed with his master, and the cargo ship's course was not changed. At noon, the two dined in the captain's quarters, who then immediately went up to the bridge for his shift, while Van Voorn lay down on his bed for midday siesta. The heat had intensified and it had become difficult to breathe in the thick furnace. The sailors felt as if they were sealed inside a large glass blue jar from which the air was slowly being removed. Harver ordered the engineer to build up speed, hoping that would at least create an artificial current to cool them down a bit. Van Voorn was finally unable to sleep with such a capsule and sat himself half naked on his bed, constantly shaking a straw fan. Suddenly he saw someone enter his cabin. He was a short man wearing a navy blue jacket and white trousers, with uncombed hair that hung unkempt to his shoulders the size of his head, under a navy blue cap with a faded leather brim. This man, with his small eyes, looked attentively at Van Voorn and showed that he recognized him as he greeted him cordially. He then proceeded to the master's office. Paying absolutely no attention to the presence of the ship owner, he reached out, took the ship's log from a drawer, opened it, and appeared to read what Captain Harver had recorded that day. Van Voorn, watching the mysterious stranger, thought that he had been sent by the captain in order to see something in the diary entries. Suddenly, however, he saw him take out a red pencil from his pocket, take the ruler from the desk, and draw a red line. Then he closed the book, put it in its place, and went away as quietly as he had come, without this time saluting the shipowner Van Voorn. He, surprised, because he knew well that no one was allowed to write in the journal but the captain, called the cabin boy and asked him who was the man who just came into the cabin, and the waiter, bewildered, replied that no one had come in. Then Van Voorn shouted, "But it's not possible. I saw with my own eyes a man in a blue jacket and white pants enter here. Go find the captain and beg him to come here for a moment." Captain Harver arrived immediately, and he too listened with curiosity to the story of the shipowner. After thinking for a moment, he told Van Voorn that he thought it impossible that someone had entered his cabin. After all, no one had the right to tamper with the ship's logbook, and besides, with such unbearable heat, no one wore a jacket on the Anaild. Harver surmised, "I guess you fell asleep and had a dream." "No, unthinkable. I was wide awake, and sure enough, I saw this man writing in red pencil in the diary." The captain smiled, took out the diary in his hands. He opened the book, and just as he was about to tease Van Voorn, he was surprised to see a fresh red line marking the ship's change of course. Harvard did not dare believe his eyes. He called the lieutenant and ordered the entire crew to assemble on deck. Van Voorn inspected them one by one, but ascertained that none of them was the man who had broken into the captain's cabin. And he said sharply, "He'll be a stowaway then." He then ordered a thorough search of the vessel, but nothing suspicious was found. After all, no one had a red pencil, rare for the time. Then look at the barometer. It always fell. He thought that the storm had passed in front of them and was pulling towards the Tramuntana, so their course was right. He took the diary and wrote under the mysterious red line, quote, "Time 2:45 p.m. An unknown drew the red line on this page between 1:30 and 2 p.m., probably a stowaway. The investigations are continuing," end quote. But the searches, though continued with still greater care, yielded no result. The master and the shipowner sat in silence in the cabin. It was now 3:30 p.m. Then Van Voorn said, quote, "You're not telling me, Captain, that the red line marks a course very different from ours?" "Nearly 8 minutes to the north," replied Harvard in concern. A few more moments of silence passed, and suddenly Van Voorn said abruptly, "I would like to follow the course of the red line." The captain did not answer immediately. He went to the barometer, tapped it with his finger, and said dryly, "We would probably fall into the storm zone." Van Voorn looked him straight in the face and said firmly, "I was not dreaming, Captain. I saw the man who drew the red line. I saw him well." Sailors are suspicious and short-tempered. The master went up to the bridge and ordered the diversion. The ship banked to starboard for exactly the first 8 minutes. The time was 3:35 p.m. As the course changed to the north, so did the weather. A breath of wind blew, and when night fell, the wind had increased. At the same time, the captain ordered that all the furniture and objects be tied well, because at night they would have bogie, as the sailors used to say. That is, the ship would sway left and right from the waves. And he wasn't wrong. Anyald, after a while, was struggling in the storm. The ship, that is. Huge waves were engulfing it. The boat was rocking with extreme violence by the raging ocean. The captain had tied himself to the bridge so as not to be swept away by the furious waters, which were foaming furiously. Next to him, also bound, was the shipowner, who was personally at the helm. Both, covered by the water, soaked to the bone, they struggled to keep the boat on its course. Nothing in the ship was left in its place. The night, a wild night, passed in the midst of continual agony, but the Anyald, the ship had proved to be a hardy ship and withstood the rigors of the ocean. Finally, around dawn, the storm began to rage. A bright sun dispelled the last lingering clouds. Captain Harvard and Master Van Voorn, having gone to take off their wet clothes, returned to the bridge, where the mate, who was surveying the horizon with the binoculars, called out to the captain, "I see something like a wreck ahead." They all looked. Indeed, one point was distinct, something like a boat. The ship accelerated its course. Soon they could see more clearly. It was a boat on which shipwrecked men were aboard. It was a mystery how the boat held up in the terrible storm that had preceded it. When the ship got close enough, he threw down a ladder and the castaways climbed one by one onto the Anyald. And then Van Voorn uttered a shrill cry of insurmountable astonishment. The first castaway who jumped exhausted on deck was the unknown one, whom the shipowner had seen, my hair is standing on end, whom the shipowner had seen marking the red course in the ship's logbook. The same height, the same messy hair, the cap with the leather brim, the blue jacket and the white trousers. He was a lieutenant of the English cargo ship Kingdom of Scots, which had sunk just at dawn after having struggled all night with the ferocious waves. When the terrible rough seas calmed her momentum, the freighter took on so much water that her master decided to abandon her, having boarded the ship's lifeboat with all his crew. Fortunately, just 3 hours later, the Dutch Anyald was where it should be, to collect them. Van Voorn was still gazing ecstatically at the lieutenant. All the while, the English captain was recounting their adventures. "What is your name?" asked Lieutenant Van Voorn. "William Williams," he answered. Can you tell me what you did yesterday from 2 to 3 in the afternoon inside your ship? Sure, I was asleep. In fact, I slept very soundly and was awakened by my sailors when the storm began to increase, he said. Do you have any red pencil? Captain Harver asked him in turn. Indeed I have, answered the castaway, and took one out of his pocket. This is, cried Van Voorn in astonishment, this is what the apparition I saw also held. What emerged was utterly shocking. The sight of the mysterious apparition proved that it was a unique telepathic phenomenon. The sleeping English lieutenant sensed the ferocity of the storm that had hit them, and in the impending wreck that followed, and telepathically alerted the other ship to change course. This, of course, saved their lives. It was the mysterious apparition that saved the long-suffering castaways in the Indian Ocean. Who will be able to explain these terrifying mysteries of the seas? And this was from strangepress.gr. This was published in a nightly newspaper, a Greek newspaper, Vradini, on February 18, 1935. Now, I have to tell you, many a time our guardian angel takes on our appearance and even uses our own voice and appears to someone else. It could have been the man's, William Williams' guardian angel who appeared to the owner. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. This is a true story, by the way. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.